A white police officer stared at her, demanding her identification, questioning her presence as if she didn't belong. It was supposed to be a peaceful morning jog in a suburban park for Danielle Rivers, a respected attorney and mother of two. Turned hostile the moment she was cornered, Danielle knew exactly what this was: racist, rude, and unapologetic. She had done nothing wrong, and yet here she was, surrounded, accused, and treated like a threat. What happened next will leave you speechless. Subscribe for stories that expose injustice, create change, and remind us why silence is never an option. Jasmine Lee had always been calm under pressure. As an FBI agent, she'd chased down fugitives, cracked deep-cover cases, and walked into rooms full of danger without flinching. But nothing prepared her for being treated like a criminal in her own country, for simply jogging in a park. Her heartbeat thundered, not from the run, but from the white officer's hateful stare. "You don't belong here," he said again, louder now. She took a step back. She wasn't armed. She had no backup. And still she wasn't afraid. She was furious. "I'm just jogging," she said, raising her hand slowly. The officer, eyes narrowing, stepped forward. "ID. Now." Around them, a crowd was forming, hushed, uncertain. Jasmine could feel their eyes, their silence, their fear. But no one moved. No one helped. She reached slowly for her phone instead, whispering to herself, "Stay calm. Stay safe." But before she could hit record, he struck it out of her hand. It crashed onto the gravel. "You think you can ignore me?" he snarled, kicking the phone across the path. Jasmine's instincts kicked in. Run. Her body turned before her mind did. She sprinted. Not because she was afraid of the officer, but because she didn't want to be another headline, another hashtag. Her muscles screamed. Her breath caught in her throat. She heard the heavy boots thundering behind her. He was chasing her. "He's actually chasing me." The image would not leave her mind. A white cop hunting a black woman in broad daylight. A crowd behind them, frozen in place, watching a nightmare unfold. "Stop running!" he shouted. But Jasmine pushed harder. Her lungs burned, her legs trembled. She wasn't running for her life. She was running for her name, her dignity, her right to exist in peace. But she wasn't fast enough. A sharp blow to her side sent her tumbling down the hill by the lake. The world spun. Her knees scraped across gravel. Her elbow slammed into the ground. She tasted blood. Groaning, she turned over, barely lifting her head. The officer stood above her, breathing heavy, face red, eyes wide with rage. "I told you not to run," he hissed. He yanked her up by the arm. Pain shot through her shoulder. "You're under arrest." "For what?" she gasped, struggling in his grip. "What did I do?" "Resisting, evading, threatening an officer," he rattled off, lies pouring from his mouth like venom. Her vision blurred, not from tears, but from disbelief. This was happening, really happening. She was being arrested for jogging, for protecting herself, for existing. "No," she gasped, twisting, trying to free her arm. "You don't know who I am." "I don't care who you are," he said, slamming her against a tree. "You're nobody." And that's when something inside her broke. "No," she said, louder. "I'm somebody, and you're going to regret this." He scoffed, slapping cuffs on her wrist. The metal bit into her skin. "Sure I will." She cried out, "Someone help me!" But the crowd only watched. Some recorded. Others turned away. One or two whispered to each other, unsure. No one stepped in. "Why won't they help me?" she thought, as the cuffs tightened around her wrists. Jasmine stopped struggling. She breathed in through her nose, out through her mouth. Calm, measured, strategic. The way she was trained. "Let me go," she said. "I'm Special Agent Jasmine Lee, FBI." He laughed. "Nice try." "Check my jacket pocket," she said through clenched teeth. But he didn't check. He didn't care. Not about badges, not about facts, not about truth. Just power, control, racism. "You'll spend the night in jail," he grunted, dragging her toward his patrol car. "Maybe that'll teach you some respect." "Respect for who?" she shouted, stumbling behind him. "You? You who beat down women in parks? You who silence people who dare to be seen?" He shoved her toward the car. "Get in." She shook her head. "You're wrong. You picked the wrong woman. You just don't know it yet." He opened the door, but Jasmine dropped to the ground. "I won't go," she said. "Not like this, not quietly." The crowd shifted. Murmurs. One woman, maybe 60, stepped forward. "She didn't do anything wrong," she said softly. "Back off," the officer barked. A teenage boy raised his phone. "I got the whole thing." "Put that phone down," the officer screamed. "No," the teen said. And then it began. One by one, people came forward, quiet voices turning louder. She was jogging. He hit her phone. She never resisted. "This is wrong." She said she's FBI. Jasmine's breath caught. They were speaking. Finally. She wasn't alone, not anymore. Still on the ground, she turned her head and locked eyes with the boy holding the phone. "Thank you," she whispered. The officer looked around. His confidence cracked. His hands trembled. "You people don't know what you're talking about." But they did. Jasmine raised her voice. "You're going to regret this. Because you just tried to arrest a federal agent based on nothing but the color of her skin, and you didn't even check my badge." The silence that followed was deafening. "Badge?" the woman asked. "In my pocket," Jasmine said. Another officer arrived, this one younger, eyes wide as he stepped out of his cruiser. He recognized her. "Ma'am," he said. "Agent Lee?" Jasmine nodded. "Tell your partner to take these cuffs off." The young officer froze, then turned to his partner. "You cuffed an FBI agent?" His voice cracked. "She was resisting," the older one said, panic creeping in. "She said she was FBI," the young man replied, disbelief thick in his voice. "Why didn't you verify it?" Jasmine felt the metal loosen around her wrists. The cuffs came off. She stood slowly, pain shooting through her legs and ribs, but her pride held her upright. She looked straight into the older officer's eyes. "You're going to answer for this. Every second of it." He stammered. I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," she said. The crowd clapped. Quiet at first, then louder. Support poured in. One woman cried. The teenage boy walked up and handed Jasmine her phone. "I got it all," he said. "You're a hero." Jasmine didn't smile. Not yet. "I'm just a person," she said, "who almost became a victim, again." The older officer stepped back, stunned, as his partner called for a supervisor. Jasmine turned to the crowd. "If you recorded this," she said, "don't delete it. Don't stay silent." People nodded. Some shouted, "Yes, ma'am." Others raised fists. As Jasmine walked back to her car, bruised but unbroken, the sky felt different. The air, a little heavier. She had survived, but not escaped. Not really. Because racism doesn't just chase you through parks. It follows you everywhere. But she wasn't running anymore. Jasmine Lee didn't sleep that night. Even after the cuffs were removed and the bruises on her wrist were tended to, she sat alone in her apartment, staring at the walls, the memory of that officer's voice echoing over and over again. "You don't belong here." Her body ached. Scrapes on her arms, a tender rib from when he slammed her to the ground. But it was the wound inside her chest that throbbed the loudest. She had trained for the worst, but she never imagined the worst would happen in the middle of a jog, in a quiet suburban park, under the clear blue sky, in front of people who watched and said nothing. Her phone kept buzzing, friends, colleagues, her brother Marcus. She ignored them all. Even when the videos of the incident went viral, Justice for Jasmine trending by nightfall, she stayed silent. Not because she was ashamed, but because she couldn't speak. Not yet. She needed to breathe, needed to process what had just been ripped open inside her. The next morning, she woke up to a voicemail from her mother. "Baby, I saw the video. I'm proud of how strong you were, but I'm so tired of this world treating you like you don't matter." Jasmine clutched the phone, tears burning her eyes. She remembered being 8 years old when her father was pulled over for fitting a description. He told the officer he was a pastor. The officer laughed in his face and asked if he preached from a stolen pulpit. Jasmine never forgot how her father clenched the steering wheel and whispered, "Don't say anything. Just pray." And now here she was, decades later, living her father's nightmare. The FBI called her in that afternoon. Her supervisor, Director Aldridge, was already waiting when she walked into the field office, tie loose, eyes heavy with concern. "Jasmine," he said, rising from his chair. "You okay?" She nodded, barely. "We saw the video. I read the reports. What happened to you was unacceptable." She sat down, stiff, her mind racing. "They've suspended the officer pending investigation," Aldridge continued. "Internal Affairs is on it. The mayor's office has called. The Justice Department wants a briefing." Jasmine blinked. "They're paying attention?" He nodded. "Because you're one of us, and because someone hit record." Jasmine looked away. But what if they hadn't, she wondered. What if I didn't have that badge? Would anyone care? A week passed. Her bruises began to fade, but the damage ran deeper. She couldn't sleep. Every siren outside jolted her awake. Her jogs stopped. Her favorite park felt like a crime scene now. She tried returning to work, briefings, case files, interviews, but her mind wasn't in it. Everything reminded her of that moment, of being treated like a suspect, of being called nobody. Her colleagues tiptoed around her, unsure what to say. One offered her coffee and asked gently, "Do you want to talk about it?" She smiled politely and said no, even though every fiber in her body wanted to scream. Then came the letters. Hate mail. Dozens of them. Some addressed to the office, others to her apartment. Handwritten notes calling her a liar, telling her to resign, saying she made the officer look bad. "Another angry black woman crying racism," one said. "Go back to wherever you came from." She tried to shrug it off, but it dug into her chest like shards of glass. She had served her country with honor. She had given up relationships, time with family, even her mental health for this job. And now they were calling her the problem? 2 weeks later, her younger sister Maya called. She was crying. "My classmates showed the video in school," she said. "They kept replaying the part where you hit the ground. One of them said you probably deserved it." But Jasmine's hand clenched around the phone. "I'm sorry you saw that, sweetie," she whispered. "You didn't do anything wrong," Maya sobbed. "But it still happened." Jasmine hung up and collapsed on her couch, choking back sobs. How do you explain to a 15-year-old that you can do everything right and still end up in cuffs. The Justice Department assigned Jasmine to give a testimony, a public hearing. She hesitated. She didn't want to relive it, but something inside her knew she had to. So she stood before a panel of white-suited men and women, a room full of journalists and cameras, and recounted the morning that changed everything. "I wasn't afraid," she said, her voice cracking. "I was angry, because I knew if I didn't have that badge, that man might have thrown me into the back of a squad car and erased my name from existence. He didn't see an agent. He saw a threat. And that's the part that broke me." The next day, someone posted her address online. A small group of protesters stood outside her building, holding signs that said "Blue Lives Matter" and shouting slurs she hadn't heard since high school. The police were called, but they only asked the men to keep it down. Jasmine stared from her window, numb. "I did everything right," she whispered. "Why do I still have to fight this hard to be seen?" When she returned to work again, she received a letter from an officer in another state. It read, "I saw what happened to you. I've spent my entire career pretending not to see what some of my colleagues do. But after watching you, I've decided to speak out. Thank you." Jasmine read the letter 5 times. It didn't fix everything, but it meant something, a crack in the wall. Meanwhile, the case against Officer Harding began. His department launched a full internal investigation. The video evidence was undeniable. He had violated policy, ignored procedure, and escalated a peaceful interaction into violence. His lawyers tried to spin it, said he feared for his safety, said she was uncooperative, said it was a misunderstanding. Jasmine sat in the hearing room, watching as he refused to make eye contact. When it was her turn to testify again, she looked him dead in the eyes. "You treated me like I was nothing," she said, "but I am not nothing. I am not disposable, and I won't let you get away with it." Harding was fired. Officially. His badge revoked. But that didn't stop the death threats. Jasmine began receiving messages from people claiming to be friends of Harding. Some said she deserved worse. Others posted photos of her family online. She had to move apartments, switch numbers, travel with security for a while. She barely slept. Every shadow became a threat. Every knock on the door made her flinch. It wasn't just the assault that hurt. It was everything that followed. The loneliness, the silence, the pressure to stay professional while falling apart inside. One night, she received a message from her old Quantico trainer. "Proud of you, kid. That took guts." Jasmine cried for the first time in days. Not because of the words, but because someone finally saw her. Not as a scandal or a victim, but as who she really was. A fighter. Months passed. The media moved on. The hashtag faded. But Jasmine didn't stop. She began giving talks at academies, visiting community groups, speaking at forums about racial profiling, abuse of power, and why silence is never the answer. She shared her story with young black girls who were scared to walk home at night, with mothers who feared for their sons, with officers who wanted to do better but didn't know how to start. Then came the final call, an invitation to join the President's Task Force on Police Accountability. She was stunned. "They want your voice," her director said, "because people are finally listening." And Jasmine accepted, not for recognition, but because she knew what was at stake. She sat in a grand hall, surrounded by powerful people, and shared her story again. But this time, she didn't cry. This time, her voice was strong, unshaken. "I'm not here because I want revenge," she said. "I'm here because I want change. Real change. Because no one should have to carry their badge like a shield. No one should have to prove their humanity just to take a morning jog. And when she walked out of that building, the sky was clear. The air was warm. And for the first time in months, she jogged again. Slow at first, then faster, stronger, freer. She wasn't just running anymore. She was rising. Jasmine Lee didn't know how long she stood there, alone, beneath the soft orange wash of the streetlight, watching her own breath curl in the air, her fists clenched inside her coat pockets. The government building behind her had emptied out. The reporters were gone. The security guards were gone. Even the protesters had vanished. But the weight still pressed down on her shoulders like concrete. Her statement at the president's task force had ended hours ago, her words echoing through a room full of power and politics. No one should have to carry their badge like a shield, she had said. No one should have to prove their humanity just to jog in a park. But what haunted her now, in the dead silence of the night, was the fact that she meant every single word. And still, part of her wondered if it was enough. If she was enough. Because when she looked in the mirror lately, she didn't see strength. She saw the bruises, the nightmares, the broken faith, and the painful truth that even after everything, after all the hearings, the videos, the headlines, the speeches, there was a part of her still waiting to be believed. She took the long way home that night, avoided highways, kept to the side streets. Every red light made her uneasy. Every siren in the distance made her hand twitch toward her side, instinctively checking for her badge, even though she wasn't wearing it. Her apartment building, once her refuge, now felt like a fishbowl. She had to install new locks, new cameras. Her name was known now. Too known. People recognized her face. Some thanked her. Some stared. Others whispered loud enough for her to hear. That's her. The agent who brought down the cop. The woman who cried racism. It made her skin crawl. Inside her apartment, she dropped her coat to the floor and sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall. It was quiet. Too quiet. And that's when the shaking started. First her hands, then her breath. The panic came in waves. Fast. Brutal. She gripped the edge of the mattress and rocked forward, tears spilling freely now, chest heaving as she whispered to herself, "Breathe, Jasmine. Breathe." But the silence had turned against her. It wasn't peace, it was pressure. The pressure of being a symbol, a fighter, a face for justice. But who was there for her? She didn't want to admit it, but the loneliness was unbearable. The following morning, she forced herself back into the field office. Her teammates greeted her with nods and careful smiles, like people walking through a museum after an earthquake. Her supervisor, Director Aldridge, pulled her aside. "We've got another situation," he said quietly. "A young man in Georgia, same kind of case. Cuffed for walking through his own neighborhood, wants to file a federal complaint, asked for you." Jasmine stared at him. "Me? Why?" "Because he said he trusts you. Said he watched your testimony with his mother. Said, if she made it out alive, maybe I can too." She blinked hard. "When do we go?" "Tomorrow." That night, Jasmine paced her apartment. Her bag was packed. The files were printed. But her mind was spinning. She thought about the young man, about how her pain had somehow become someone else's hope. That terrified her. She didn't feel like a beacon. She felt like a woman with cracks in her armor. But she couldn't say no, couldn't walk away. Because if she did, what would happen to him? What would happen to the next Jasmine Lee? She caught her reflection in the window. Not the bruises, not the trauma, but the strength that came after. The quiet fire in her eyes that even she had forgotten about. The next morning she boarded the plane, alone. No team. Just her, a folder, and a mission. In Georgia, she met the boy, barely 18, slim, with fear behind his eyes that Jasmine recognized all too well. His mother held his hand as he told the story. He said I looked suspicious, asked if I had stolen something. I was walking with headphones. That's all I was doing. Jasmine listened, took notes, then paused and said softly, "You didn't do anything wrong." His lips trembled. Then why did it feel like I did? That question stuck with her for days. Back at the field office, the stress began to pile on. New cases, new testimonies, and old wounds reopening each time. Jasmine started waking up in cold sweats again. One night she screamed so loudly in her sleep, her neighbor called the police. They knocked on her door. 2 white officers. Her breath caught in her throat when she opened it. "You okay, ma'am?" one of them asked. His voice wasn't cruel, but it wasn't gentle either. She nodded slowly, her hands visible, her posture still. "Just a nightmare," she said. They left without incident, but she didn't sleep again. Days blurred into nights. She began skipping meals, avoided phone calls. Until one afternoon, she collapsed in the middle of the FBI hallway, right there between the elevators and briefing room. Her vision went dark. She awoke in the infirmary, hooked up to fluids. Her supervisor sat beside her. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked gently. "Or slept for more than 2 hours?" She didn't answer. "You're not a machine, Jasmine. You're allowed to break down. But if you don't stop trying to carry this entire system on your back, it's going to crush you." She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "If I don't carry it, who will?" He didn't have an answer. The Bureau ordered her to take a mandatory leave. 2 weeks, no field work, no interviews, just rest. But Jasmine didn't rest. She visited schools. She spoke at town halls. She met with grieving families who had buried loved ones because someone feared for their life at the sight of brown skin. And every time, people thanked her, hugged her, called her brave. But no one asked if she was okay. Until one night, one quiet, unexpected moment, she received a message on social media. It was from the teenage boy in the park, the one who had filmed the whole thing. "Hey, Agent Lee, just wanted to say thank you. You changed my life. I joined the student council. I'm speaking at our school's anti-racism assembly. Because of you. I thought you should know," Jasmine cried. But not from pain. From purpose. That weekend, she went back to the same park, the same tree, the same path where it all began. Her steps were slow, careful. She paused near the lake. People jogged by, walked dogs, sat on benches. For the first time, no one stared, no one questioned her, no officer demanded ID, and yet the scar remained, not visible, but real. She stood still, took a deep breath, and whispered, "You tried to erase me, but I'm still here." Then she pulled out her phone, recorded a short video. To the people watching this, she said, "I didn't ask to become a symbol. I just wanted to run, to breathe, to exist. But I was forced into a fight I couldn't walk away from. I've been scared. I've been bruised. I've been tired beyond words. But I'm still standing. And if you're listening, if this story means anything to you, press that like button. Not for me, but for the people who don't make it out. For the ones who are never believed. For the voices still waiting to be heard. Your support doesn't just lift me, it protects the next person. So please, stand with me." She pressed upload, walked a little farther, let the sun warm her skin, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled. Jasmine Lee didn't return from her leave quietly. She came back changed, more focused, more guarded, more determined, but also haunted by something no one could quite name. Her eyes were sharper, her voice steadier, but there was a silence about her that carried weight. Something had happened during those weeks away from the field, something she hadn't told anyone. She filed no reports, gave no explanations. Not even her closest colleague, Agent Ramirez, could get it out of her. She'd say, "I just needed space," or "I was catching up with family," but everyone knew there was more. It was in the way she scanned every room before stepping inside, the way she flinched at harmless noises, the way she kept her phone off for days at a time. Jasmine had always been private, but this was different. What no one knew, not even Director Aldridge, was that Jasmine had gone off the grid for 9 days, disappeared, no bureau clearance, no local contact, no GPS signal. And during those 9 days, she did something that would change her life, and possibly the future of justice in America. It started with an encrypted email. No name, no subject, just a link, sent to her burner phone at 2:13 a.m., the kind of message you delete without opening. But Jasmine clicked it. The link opened to a video, a grainy security feed, a young black man being dragged from his car during a traffic stop in rural Mississippi. The officer in the footage wasn't just aggressive, he was calculating. He removed his body cam before the takedown, covered the license plate of his own vehicle, dragged the man behind a building out of view. The next morning, the man was found unconscious in a ditch. The incident never made the news. No internal investigation. The officer still on duty. Jasmine recognized the victim. He had filed a complaint 2 years earlier. She had marked it, "Needs further investigation," but never heard back. Now here he was again, nearly dead. And the bureau? Silent. She packed a bag, took a week's leave, and vanished. Alone. She rented a car under an alias and drove 12 hours straight to a small, crumbling town called Ash Creek. No one from the outside ever came to Ash Creek unless they had family there, or a reason to stay far, far away. The local police station looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 80s. Jasmine wore a hoodie and jeans. No badge, no bureau clothes. She posed as a podcast journalist digging into forgotten crimes. What she found went far deeper than forgotten. It was deliberate, evidence hidden, dashcam footage edited, locals too afraid to speak. And in the center of it all, the officer from the video, Sheriff Roy Harlan, a man who had served the town for 27 years and had never once been disciplined, despite more than 24 complaints, every single one mysteriously dismissed. Jasmine played it cool, asked questions, recorded interviews, bought coffee for clerks and cleaners. But then, on the 4th day, she found something buried beneath a shed behind the sheriff's office. A box wrapped in black plastic. Inside were dozens of items, phones, wallets, photos, belongings of people who had filed complaints but were never heard from again. One phone still worked. She charged it in her car and opened the photo roll. That's when she saw it. A picture of a woman's face, bloodied, cuffed, tossed into a patrol car. It was her. She gasped. Her hand trembled as she scrolled through more images, more victims, more horror. Someone had been collecting trophies. Suddenly, she understood. Her assault at the park wasn't random. It was part of something coordinated. Jasmine wasn't just a target of bias. She was a target of someone's plan. She called no one, not even the bureau. She stayed in a motel under a different name. She couldn't risk going to local authorities. She couldn't risk tipping off the wrong person. On day 6, she broke into the sheriff's office at 3 a.m. and hacked into his private computer system. The files were encrypted, but she had the training. What she uncovered was worse than she expected. A network of law enforcement officials from multiple towns who shared reports, video footage, and even incident recommendations for dealing with so-called high-risk suspects, almost all of whom were people of color. Jasmine downloaded everything onto an external hard drive, tucked it into her sock, and fled town at sunrise. But someone was onto her. Her car was followed across state lines. She noticed the same gray truck appearing behind her 3 times. She ditched the car at a gas station and hitched a ride with a trucker heading north. When she reached D.C., she didn't go home. She went straight to a private drop location the Bureau used for anonymous tips. She mailed the hard drive there, under a false name, then finally called Aldridge. "I have something," she said. "What kind of something?" he asked. "The kind that makes people disappear." The Bureau launched a classified investigation, codenamed Operation Eclipse. But Jasmine remained on the sidelines. She didn't want her name attached, not yet. Too dangerous. She returned to work like nothing had happened, but Ramirez noticed the scar on her hand. "What happened?" he asked. "Slipped on ice," she said. It was August. Weeks later, when Operation Eclipse was leaked to the media, the Bureau made no public comment. But several high-ranking officers in rural jurisdictions were suddenly suspended. A few quietly resigned. Internal Affairs began a sweep through old civil rights violation reports. Behind the scenes, Jasmine watched it unfold. Quiet, invisible, effective. But the pressure on her didn't go away. The man who had sent her that first anonymous email vanished. His apartment abandoned. His number disconnected. No trace of him anywhere. The fear returned. Jasmine began looking over her shoulder, changed her locks again, started keeping her badge under her pillow. But she never told anyone what she'd done. Not fully, because if the wrong people found out, she'd be next. Still, something had changed in her. Something powerful. At her next public forum, she didn't hold back. She didn't soften her language. She didn't speak like an agent trained in federal policy. She spoke like a survivor, a fighter, a woman who knew what it meant to walk into darkness and come back with the truth. "My job isn't just to investigate crimes," she told the crowd. "It's to expose systems. It's to fight for those who don't have badges or platforms or anyone to believe them. And if that makes me a target again, so be it." The audience rose to their feet. She received a handwritten letter the next day. "I don't know what you did or how you did it, but something changed. I see people paying attention now. I see investigations happening. I see names being cleared. Whoever you are behind that calm voice, thank you." Jasmine sat in her office that night, alone, staring out at the city lights. So much of what she'd done would never be known. No medals, no headlines. Just quiet justice. But maybe that was enough. Maybe real change didn't need cameras, just courage. And yet, there are still parts of her story she's never told. Still pages in that notebook hidden behind her bookshelf that no one has read. Still passwords and access codes memorized in her mind, just in case she has to vanish again. And if you've made it this far into Jasmine's journey, ask yourself this. Would you have done what she did? Would you have chased the truth into a town that didn't want to be seen? Would you have risked your name, your life, your career, for people you've never met? Because Jasmine did. She didn't ask for applause. She didn't ask for fame. But today, she asks for one thing. If her story moved you, leave a comment. Let her know you're listening. Let her know you believe in her, that you see her, that she's not alone. Let Jasmine Lee know you'd stand beside her if she needed you, because we need more people like her in this world. And if you haven't already, like this story to show your support. It might just be a button to you, but to someone like Jasmine, it's a sign she's not fighting alone. Jasmine Lee had always believed in the law. She believed in order, in facts, in truth, in the power of her badge to protect not just others, but herself. But everything changed on the morning she went for a jog in that quiet suburban park. The one place she thought was safe enough to let her guard down. That morning, she didn't wear her badge. She didn't need it. She wore running shoes, earbuds, and a sense of calm she hadn't felt in weeks. Until she heard him. The voice, sharp, authoritative, laced with something far more dangerous than suspicion. "You don't belong here," he said. And suddenly, Jasmine was no longer a woman jogging. She was a black woman being targeted. Again. That officer didn't see her humanity. He saw her skin. He didn't see the countless cases she had closed, the undercover ops she had led, the lives she had saved. He saw a threat, a problem, an outsider. And in his eyes, that was enough. Jasmine tried to explain, tried to de-escalate, but her calmness made him angrier. When she reached for her phone, he knocked it away. When she tried to run, he chased her like prey. When she finally stood her ground and pulled out her badge, revealing she was a federal agent, not some suspicious woman, his face went white. And yet even with her authority laid bare in front of him, he still tried to cuff her, still tried to claim dominance. That day shattered something inside Jasmine. She didn't cry, not right away. She stood tall, held her badge in the air, faced him down with a stare that said, "You can't erase me." And the moment was recorded, shared, viral. Millions saw it. Millions praised her. But that night, when the camera was gone and the crowd had dispersed, Jasmine collapsed in the darkness of her apartment and cried harder than she had in years, because she knew something deeper than humiliation had happened. She had almost been erased. What followed was a storm. Headlines, interviews, death threats, supporters, haters. She became a symbol, but not a person. No one asked if she slept at night. No one knew that her hands still shook whenever she saw a uniform, or that her little sister Maya stopped going to school for a week after her classmates started whispering, "Isn't that your sister who faked that cop thing?" The Bureau launched an investigation. The officer was suspended. But that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. 2 months later, she received an encrypted email. No sender, no subject, just a video file. She almost deleted it, but something told her to look. What she saw sent a chill through her bones. A man, black, mid-20s, pulled from a car by an officer in a rural Mississippi town. No provocation. No cause. The body cam was turned off. The beating happened behind a shed. The man left unconscious. The report filed? Suspect fled. Injury unknown. Jasmine recognized the name. The man had filed a civil complaint 2 years earlier. She had marked it for follow-up, but it disappeared from the system. She felt sick. That was the moment she knew her confrontation wasn't random. She had been targeted. And she wasn't the only one. Without telling the Bureau, she packed a bag, wiped her phone, and disappeared. She drove south, alone, no backup, no badge, just a fire in her chest that wouldn't let her sleep. She arrived in a town called Ash Creek, a place so small it barely had streetlights, but where whispers of corruption were louder than sirens. She posed as a journalist, began asking questions. Faces stiffened, doors closed. But one woman, a local nurse, told her, "We all know. We just can't prove it." Jasmine pushed harder, dug deeper, found a shed behind the sheriff's office, broke in one night and discovered a black plastic box. Inside were stolen IDs, phones, and photos. One phone still worked. And when she turned it on, the first image in the gallery was a photo of her. Her face. Bloody. Cuffed. Thrown against the tree from the park that day. They had been watching her. Her knees buckled. She dropped the phone. She wanted to run, but knew she couldn't. Not anymore. She slept with a knife under her pillow that night. Not because she wanted to fight, but because she had to survive. The next night, she hacked into the sheriff's private system. What she found chilled her to the core. A secret network of officers across 3 states sharing intelligence. They exchanged notes on risky suspects, almost all black or brown. They listed names, addresses, routines. Jasmine's file was there, detailed, updated. They knew who she was. She downloaded everything, hid the drive in her sock, drove all night, changed cars twice, ditched her burner, never went back to her apartment, not until she handed the drive over to the bureau anonymously. That drive launched Operation Eclipse. The FBI couldn't keep it quiet for long. Names leaked. Small-town officers resigned or were quietly removed. Civil rights teams were activated. Lawsuits reopened. But Jasmine remained in the shadows. She didn't want credit. She wanted safety. Still, the threats came. She found a bullet taped to her mailbox, a red X on her apartment door. One morning, she caught a man watching her from across the street. She never found him again. Her windows stayed closed after that, her lights off after dark. The bravest woman in the bureau now lived in fear. She tried returning to work, but every hallway felt colder. Every briefing room felt distant. Her colleagues didn't ask questions, not because they didn't care, but because they knew not to. But even then, Jasmine didn't stop. She met with victims. Quietly. Privately. One boy had been wrongfully arrested 3 times in 2 months. Another woman was fired after reporting a traffic stop assault. Jasmine gave them resources, took notes, passed reports up the chain. Sometimes they vanished. Sometimes they led to real change. Then came the last piece, the name of the man who coordinated the list. He wasn't a sheriff. He wasn't a patrol officer. He was a retired agent from the bureau, a man Jasmine had met before, smiled with, shaken hands with. He had her file, and he had passed it along. She wanted to scream, wanted to burn the system to the ground, but instead she gathered the evidence. She handed it to Internal Affairs, and she waited. 3 weeks later, the man was arrested. He tried to play innocent, tried to deny it. But Jasmine walked into the hearing room, stood before the judge, and laid everything out. Photos, files, names, patterns. And when it was over, the courtroom was silent. No one clapped. No one moved. But Jasmine stood straighter than ever. She walked outside and finally breathed. The wind felt different. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel afraid. But the truth is, Jasmine never really escaped. Not completely. Because the fight doesn't end when the headlines fade. It doesn't end when the officers resign. Or when a drive is turned in. The fight continues every time she walks into a room and someone asks for her credentials with raised eyebrows. Every time she sees flashing lights in her rearview mirror and her heart skips a beat. Every time a victim looks at her and says, "They won't believe me." That's the weight Jasmine Lee carries, not because she wants to, but because she must. Because she knows if she doesn't, who will? And so if you're reading this, if you felt even a fraction of her pain, if your hands clenched when you read about the officer knocking her phone away, if your chest tightened when you saw her face in that photograph inside the shed, if your breath caught when she drove alone into that dark, quiet town, then do something. Leave a comment below. Let Jasmine know she's not alone, that you believe her, that you admire her, that her pain wasn't for nothing. Click the like button, not just for the story, but for the fight it took to write it. Because Jasmine didn't just survive racism. She hunted it, and she made it answer for what it did. And the next time someone tells her she doesn't belong, she'll smile and say, "I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." Jasmine Lee never imagined that a peaceful jog would become the moment that defined the rest of her life. But that's exactly what happened when a white officer's voice sliced through the morning air like a blade. "You don't belong here!" The words were simple, but the meaning behind them was heavy, cruel, and deliberate. A reminder that no matter how many badges she carried, how many cases she solved, or how fiercely she fought for justice, the color of her skin would always be seen by some as a threat. She had gone to that park to breathe, to forget the pressure of being one of the few black women in the FBI, to clear her head from the endless responsibilities and expectations. But instead, she found herself staring into the face of the very system she had sworn to protect. A system that now saw her not as a protector, but as a problem. When she reached for her phone to record the encounter, the officer struck it from her hand, and in that split second, she felt something crack inside her. Not fear, not panic, but a heartbreak that ran deeper than anything physical. A pain that whispered, "Even now, after all this time, they still don't see you." She ran, not out of guilt, but out of instinct, out of the desperate need to escape what she already knew was spiraling into something dangerous. But he chased her, tackled her, tried to drag her down and make her invisible, just another statistic. Only when she pulled out her badge, holding it high with blood on her hands and fire in her eyes, did the crowd gasp and realize what they were witnessing. A federal agent, profiled and nearly arrested while jogging for no reason other than her race. That video made headlines. It went viral. People called her brave, a hero, a symbol of resilience. But the truth? The truth was far more painful. Jasmine went home that night and cried until she couldn't breathe. She sat on the edge of her bed and wondered how many others had gone through the same thing without the badge, without the camera, without the witnesses. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. She started double-locking her door, flinched every time a police siren passed. And when she looked in the mirror, all she saw was someone broken. Someone tired of being strong all the time. The messages poured in, both supportive and hateful. Some praised her for speaking up. Others called her a liar, an embarrassment to the badge, a race baiter. And still, she said nothing. Not yet. Because deep down, she knew something wasn't right. Something about that morning didn't feel like an isolated act. It felt planned, deliberate. And she couldn't shake the feeling that the officer who stopped her had known more about her than he let on. Weeks later, she received a strange, anonymous email. No subject line. No message. Just a video file. She almost didn't open it, but curiosity and fear got the better of her. The video showed another black man, in another small town, being dragged from his vehicle during a traffic stop, his cries muffled by the wind, his body thrown against the pavement. The footage was grainy, incomplete, clearly from a hacked security feed. There was no news coverage, no investigation. The incident had never been reported. Jasmine's chest tightened. Something in her gut told her this wasn't random. She recognized the town. She recognized the officer. And most terrifying of all, she remembered seeing a complaint about that exact officer 2 years ago. She had flagged it, but someone had buried it. That was the moment she made a decision. She didn't tell her supervisors, didn't ask permission. She packed a small bag, grabbed a burner phone, and disappeared. She drove south alone, toward a forgotten corner of Mississippi called Ash Creek, a place with more silence than justice, more shadows than truth. She posed as a reporter, rented a room in a worn-down motel with peeling wallpaper and a broken lock, and she began asking questions. Quietly. Carefully. But even that was dangerous. People turned away, closed their doors, pretended not to know anything. Until one old man whispered, "We know what they're doing. We just can't stop it." While Jasmine followed the trail to the sheriff's office, a building that looked more like a hunting lodge than a place of law. And late one night, she broke in. Behind the station, inside a rusted shed, she found a box wrapped in thick black plastic. Inside were dozens of stolen items, wallets, phones, jewelry, IDs, all from black victims who had filed complaints or gone missing. Her hands trembled as she picked up a phone and unlocked it. The photo album opened, and the first image made her drop it. It was her, a photo taken the day of the park assault, her face bloodied, her body crumpled. The angle of the photo meant someone had been watching from a distance. Someone had been following her, targeting her. And she had never known. Jasmine didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. Her skin crawled. Her breath came in gasps. She felt hunted. The next day, she broke into the sheriff's personal office and hacked into his computer. She found what she was looking for, and more than she could have imagined. A secret network of officers across multiple towns, sharing information, tracking problem individuals, most of them black, most of them unarmed, most of them now silenced. It was a conspiracy wrapped in silence, protected by power. Her name was on the list, Jasmine Lee, FBI, location, Atlanta. High risk, needs containment. That's when she knew. Her assault wasn't random. It was coordinated. She copied everything, transferred it to a drive, taped it to her leg, and fled. She drove through the night, changed cars, ditched the burner, slept once in a rest stop bathroom. And when she got back to Washington, she didn't go home. She went straight to a bureau drop site and turned in the evidence anonymously. Operation Eclipse was launched within the week. The bureau went silent, but inside the system, heads began to roll. Officers were suspended. Investigations reopened. Towns were shaken to their core, but no one knew who made it happen. Jasmine stayed quiet, let the storm pass over her, but the stress didn't fade. She found herself panicking in public, watching every car that passed her apartment, and one night, she woke to find a note under her door. "You think we don't know what you did?" it said. No name, just a bullet taped beside it. Jasmine slept on her couch for a month. Sometimes not at all. But she never stopped fighting. She gave private interviews, spoke with victims, helped reopen old cases. She used aliases, rented decoy apartments. And even though her soul was tired, even though the weight of it all left her breathless some days, she pressed on. Because she had seen the rot. She had felt it sink its claws into her life. And she refused to let it win. Eventually, the truth surfaced. A high-ranking official was arrested, someone she had once shaken hands with. someone who had helped build the list that almost got her killed. When Jasmine testified in court, her voice didn't tremble. Her hands didn't shake. She looked him in the eye and said, "You thought I would disappear. You were wrong." And when the verdict came down, guilty on all counts, she finally allowed herself a smile. Not because it made everything right, not because justice had fully been served, but because for the first time since that morning in the park, she didn't feel powerless. She felt whole. And now, when Jasmine jogs through that same park, she carries more than earbuds. She carries memory, pain, purpose. She remembers the boot above her phone, the cuffs, the crowd that said nothing. And she remembers the path she had to walk, alone, terrified, unarmed, just to be believed. Jasmine Lee will never be the same. But she's still here, and she's still fighting. For every voice silenced, for every name forgotten, for every person who's ever been told they don't belong here. And she's walking proof that they do. And if you felt her pain, if you were moved by her strength, leave a comment to let her know she's not alone. Click the like button to say, "I see you, Jasmine." Because this story isn't just about injustice. It's about the fire it takes to burn through it, and the woman who refused to let it define her.